For the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for
all. Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Member Daschle?
Yes.
Member Hurley?
Yes.
Member Young?
Yes.
Vice Chair Hawkinsmith?
Yes.
Chair Lowry?
Yes.
We have a quorum.
Okay, the first thing on our meeting of February 6, 2025 is the approval of the agenda. Does anybody have anything to add to the agenda today?
Are you looking at the revised?
Yes, but I
Agenda.
don't know if I have to mention that or not. I know there's been a revision to add item 4G, which we're happy to do, which is, and other than that, anybody else have anything they want to add as a discussion item? Okay, I do.
Sure.
So you're going to say something, Brandon?
Staff has a few items after
Okay.
you speak.
These are just really, really brief things. I just want to keep them in our thought process for maybe next meeting and stuff. And at the workshop we had, I guess that was last week, there was some interesting things raised. And one of them was, and this is kind of directed to staff, is to start thinking about how we create, I don't know if it's a template for non-historic district rebuild. So homes that we're finding are historic but aren't in the historic district, which is, is kind of more under the pastoral overlay. We kind of have an idea of what the homes are supposed to, how they're supposed to be repaired or additions to or whatever. And I think we were talking about if historic homes get designated in, like Bella Vista, for example, do they have a different set of rules? And there's really no rules in place, I don't think. I mean, do you go under the underlying zone, or do we have to kind of get a feel for the historic homes in that neighborhood and push the information that way? Does that make sense what I'm talking about? Because that's going to start coming up. And for people on the board here too, I think we need to think about that a little bit. For example, if they get a FEMA variance for one of those homes and there has to be a certificate of appropriateness, what are our standards that we look at to make those decisions? Okay. The other thing is from the workshop last week in the Division 20 proposed changes, there's a typo, I think, that I just want to point out. And if you go to 2024, and you probably don't have it in front of you, but it's on design review and required drawings under section A4. It says after, and this is A4, after the completion of the design review in 4 above. So it should say 3 because we're in 4. You follow what I'm saying? I think we switched those around and that probably just got missed. The other thing, I'm already having the discussions here. For what I'd like to add to talk about at the end of the meeting is maybe a little discussion about the design guidebook. Just maybe some suggestions or thoughts so we can start thinking about that. So I'd like to add that to the agenda, as well as maybe just have a short talk or have a general understanding about the Mary Pier and the shuffleboard court, since those are going to be in our bailiwick at some point too. All right? So we can, I think I just discussed 2 of those things. So I guess we're just adding 5B and C. And then Brandon, did you say you had something?
Yes, and I think the design guidebook is linked up with the amendments that we discussed at the workshop last week. I just had a comment on that. I believe we'll probably be bringing that back to you in March or April for recommendation to the planning board. So I just wanted to address that. Looking at action items, the applicant for item 4B has asked to move that to a different agenda. I don't have an agenda for that item yet, but they're not present today. So if we could remove 4B. and the applicant for 4D had asked to have their case heard first, as they're under a time frame to leave. So that's all I have.
Okay. Okay, so now, so otherwise, I have a motion for the approval of the agenda. I'll make a motion to go ahead and approve the agenda as modified.
Second?
Roll call, please.
Member Hurley.
Yes.
Member Young.
Yes.
Vice Chair Hawkinsmith.
Yes.
Member Daschle.
Yes.
Chair Lowry.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, now, ladies and gentlemen, this is the part of the meeting where we go with audience comments. If you're here to comment on certain action items that are on the agenda, you can wait and speak then. This part is if there's anybody that has any general comments on something in general that's not on the agenda for today, now's their opportunity to speak for 3 minutes about that if they'd like that, to do that. Is there anybody here for those type of audience comments? Okay, seeing none, the next thing is the approval of the minutes from January 9th of 2025. Have all the board members have an opportunity to read those minutes? And does anybody have any comments on those or a motion?
I'll motion to accept the minutes.
I'll second.
Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Member Young.
Yes.
Vice Chair Hawkinsmith.
Yes.
Member Daschle.
Yes.
Member Hurley.
Yes.
Chair Lowry.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, now we're to number 4, action items, and I believe you said there's a request to do D first.
Yes,
Is that correct?
correct.
So
Yes.
who has the presentation for that?
I have that one, if we could pull up the PowerPoint. Okay, so this is case number 25009 for 209 Gulf Way. Actually, before I start on this presentation, I just wanted to make an announcement about the local historic designation cases being heard tonight. Thank you all for making application. This is our 5th meeting, I believe, where we've had a significant number of these, and we're really appreciative to those of you who choose to and are able to maintain their structures on our local historic registry. I did want to say that I believe all of the applicants who have come forward for this meeting are the owners of the structures. We do ask that if you are the owner, if you have not filled out a waiver to have your home placed on the registry, that you do so when you come up to speak. We do have the request forms right next to the podium. We can show you where those are if when you step up. If your if your request is approved today, your structure is immediately placed on the registry. Once it's on the registry, it will be on the registry for at least 1 year. It cannot be removed during that time frame. If you take advantage of any kind of incentive, which does include the substantial improvement waiver, your structure does need to remain on the registry for its lifetime. We do not currently prevent demolition of structures, but we do require noticing for that. If you've not received any incentives, the noticing is 30 days. If you have received incentives, the noticing is up to 90 days. If you have any questions about any type of improvements that can be made to your structure once you're placed on the registry, please let staff know. You are allowed to make interior renovations to your structure without needing to come forward before this board. However, if you're making any kind of exterior improvements that are not just repairs, one-to-one improvements of your structure, those do typically need to come forward in what's called a certificate of appropriateness. So that may delay the issuance of a permit for those exterior improvements. I just wanted to let you know that before we get started. So moving on to the application, we have a local historic designation request for 209 Gulf Way, case 25009. The applicant and owner is Linda K. Walker. They're requesting local historic designation of the 2-story structure with rooftop deck on the subject property. We have some photographs of the property. You can see on the left when it was what was originally a trio of structures. We have the southernmost of the trio on this agenda as well for demolition. But you can see the photo on the left side of the screen. This was taken for an appraisal back in 1999. There have been some noticeable changes to the residence since then. You can see the addition of the rear upper story. Now this is a lateral addition, so it isn't considered a significant modification to the structure itself, of course, as well as the upper story deck. And these changes were made prior to the structure's designation as a contributing resource in the 2015 Historic Resource Survey. Since those since that designation, the applicant has replaced the siding on the second-story lateral addition, as well as the rear of the original structure that faces the alleyway to the east. They have also enclosed the carport. Staff has reviewed these changes. We do find that the structure is still eligible for local historic designation, but particularly with the fiber cement siding that's been added to the second story, as well as the enclosed portion of the original rear structure. We do just caution against any kind of future incompatible changes to the structure. Of course, placing it on the local historic registry is the best way to preserve the structure and prevent any kind of future incompatibilities. So we do have, again, concerns about potential future alterations that may continue to alter the historic character. However, with the addition to the rear of the structure being a lateral addition, we do feel that it's sectioned off enough from the historic home itself. We do support the application to locally designate the residence as a historic building. We find it significant in the area of architectural style, masonry vernacular, in the period mid-20th century. The building is part of a series of structures containing similar architecture and design details that are reflective of mid-century design. We're asking for your approval for local historic designation of the single-family residence at 209 Gulf Way, case 25009. We do have the applicant and owner present. If she'd like to make any statements.
Come on up and to the dais, please, and state your name and address for the record, please.
Linda Walker, 209 Gulf Way, St. Pete Beach, 33706. Florida, I guess. All I want to say is that I love Pass Grill, and I love the historic properties that are there. I first came to Pass Grill to visit in 1982 and fell in love with it. In fact, I visited the house next door to mine, which is one of the three that Brandon mentioned. I found myself with an opportunity to own property here in 1999 and have been thrilled to do so. I did want to get above that little street and enhance my view when I first bought the property, but I also purposefully did not mess up the original house because I thought those cottages were so charming, and I still do. And so in this process that we've been through the last few months, thinking about what to do with my home, it's very clear to me I want it to be what it was. I want to retain it, and I appreciate your consideration. Do any of you have questions for me?
I have a couple, just
Sure.
because I'm going to tell you, this is a little bit, not unusual, but out of the ordinary for some of the homes we get. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but let me just explain, and so I guess you understand, and everybody else does too. When people come to me and they say, like, you know, what's the qualifications that I need to have my house historically designated? And I said, well, basically, it's got to be 50 years old. Okay? But then I always add a little addendum to that, and I say, as long as you haven't done a lot of stuff to it that makes it not look historic anymore. Okay? Although I don't think we've ever had one where we rejected one that was over 50 years old. So, and you don't understand when Brandon or the staff cautions some of those things about, you know, because before your house wasn't officially historic, you did some additions, you did some changes to it that maybe today we would say you couldn't do, like you can't use that kind of siding because it's not historic, right? You're okay, you're approved in 2015, and I'm sure I know what the board's what's going to do here. But you know, your home is probably, and I appreciate everything you said. I'm just really almost talking to other people out there that might be listening too. Well, let me ask you this question too. I know you recently got some damage maybe from the storm, but many people get their house historically designated so they can then fix it up because they're substantially damaged. And you're not.
Yeah, I'm fine.
Exactly. So that's a good thing because being historically designated is just a great thing to be. And maybe in the future you need to do something along those lines. But I guess caution's not really the right word. I just want to make sure you're aware that when the staff makes some recommendations about what you can do in the future, that obviously you take that to heart.
I will. Brandon and I have spent quite a bit of time discussing this property and my other property behind it, which you all granted historic
Yes.
designation
This
for in
is the Watson House, right?
November. Yes,
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 yes.
yes. Exactly.
Okay, good. All right. Well, I just wanted to make sure that that's kind of clear, because I would say that for what we normally get, this house has probably been altered more than a lot of the other houses. Again, it's still approved, it's
I appreciate-
contributing and all that kind of stuff. But, you know, I just want to, like I said, comment that, you know, if you make changes to the house in the future, then you have to do it in a historic kind of way, you know.
Well, again, it would have never occurred to me to come here had I made any change to the original structure, which I
Yeah.
did.
Well, I get it.
And
Thank you.
so I
get it.
appreciate your consideration of that. Thank you.
Okay. All right, does anybody else have any questions?
I have a question. Hi, Ms. Walker. On the second story addition, it looks like that's in the back of the house
It
towards the
does.
rear. Sitting on top of the roof, there's another little structure. Can you explain what that is?
On top of the roof of that house?
Yes,
of
it
that
looks like an open
lateral
air.
addition? It's a little roof deck. It's just a little roof deck with a little gazebo pergola kind of thing. It's not living space. It's
Okay.
just.
Is that something that you use
Yeah,
often?
It is. And you all are welcome to come see it anytime you like, anytime I get back in the house.
Yes, when's happy hour, right? Okay, so.
Exactly.
All right.
So before we make a motion, do we need to make sure that Ms. Walker's completed the waiver?
Oh,
Or-
is this what it is I need to sign?
Yes, please.
Thank you, Tia.
Do you have any questions about what you're signing?
No, I think I read it before. I'll just make sure that I've got it all filled out.
While you're looking at
I'm
this,
sorry.
Brandon, has everybody not filled one out, or just some have and some haven't?
Some have. We've received several.
I'll go
Can
ahead
I
and make,
just give this to the notary somewhere?
You don't need to have it notarized if you're owner. If you just fill out the top part, that's all we need.
And
Okay.
I hand it,
I'll go ahead and make the motion to approve case number 25009 for designation of the single-family residence at 209 Gulf Way as a local historic resource.
Second?
Madam Clerk, roll call?
Vice Chair Hawkinsmith,
Approve.
Member Daschle,
yes.
Member Hurley,
Yes.
Member Young,
Yes.
Chair Lowry,
Yes.
motion carries.
Okay, you're welcome. So now we're going to what's been called 4A, which is the local historic designation for the commercial or ROR structure at 104 8th Avenue.
If we could pull the PowerPoint back up. This is case 24117 for 104 8th Avenue, Marty Nora for Peter Nora of Nora Partnership LLC. The applicant is requesting local historic designation of the two-story mixed-use building. Of course, we have some historic photographs. Unfortunately, this one did not come with a photograph from its property card from the 1930s, which is a shame. The applicant did provide a postcard that included an older photo that was in your packets. You can see on the left, this is one of the 5 commercial vernacular structures that we have on the east side of 8th Avenue. It's been fairly well preserved. You can see that there were modifications primarily to the area above the arcade. That was unenclosed. It was made into a walkout patio on the upper story. And you can see that was a change that occurred between 1989 and 2015. Since 2015, there have been only modest modifications. I believe there were change-outs of the balusters and some painting, but other than that, it's been very well maintained. Staff supports the application to locally designate the structure as a historic building. We found that the building is significant in the area of architecture, particularly the commercial and masonry vernacular style that is important to the history of 8th Avenue and the period in which it was constructed, the early 20th century. It also broadly reflects the development history of Pass Grill. It was owned and operated by Mayor Ed Jewett during its early years, and it continues along with the other structures along 8th Avenue to provide those local goods and services that support the early resort and permanent residential character of the area. So we are asking for approval of case 24117 for local historic designation of the building at 104 8th Avenue. That's all I have.
Does the owner want to come forward? Doesn't have to, if he doesn't want to. Yeah, keep it short, Marty. No.
I I would just like to thank the Historic Board for everything you do. I'm, like she said, I love Pastor Grill too, and I really want to thank Brandon and Christine for all they do because, wow, we've been through a lot, and hey, thank you.
Okay. Anybody have any questions for him before he walks away? Okay.
Too late.
No, it's okay. That's fine. Thanks, Mr. Nora.
Did the Noras sign their waiver?
Yes, I received one.
Okay, well, I mean, we can make a motion in a minute, but I think we'd all agree that this is quite a historical structure on Pass Grill, especially in 8th Avenue. And we're glad to see that you finally asked it to be historically designated, but that's right. So I'll make a motion that we approve, let's see what case number we are here.
24117.
Yeah, 24117, 104 8th Avenue as a historically designated retail and residential building.
I'll
Second.
Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Member Daschle?
Yes.
Member Hurley?
Yes.
Member Young?
Yes.
Vice Chair Hawkinsmith?
Yes.
Member Chair Lowry?
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right, thank you. Now we go to 4C, since we skipped B, and that's the local historic designation number 25005 of the residents at 3406 East DeBazin Avenue. Mr. Martinez?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, board members. I'm Gil Martinez, Senior Planner, Community Development. Before you today, we have an application for local historic designation. Leanne Mathos is the applicant for 3406 East DeBazin Avenue, case number 25005. These are some historic images of the property dating back to 2008, then again in 2018. This property was the home of a former mayor for St. Pete Beach, George Mathos. He served as district commissioner for District 2 from 1961 to 64. He served on the Board of Adjustments from 1973 to 1974, and he served as mayor from 1974 to 1978. He was also a commissioner for District 3 between 1992 and 1994, and he served on the Beach Stewardship Committee from 2004 to 2009. Mr. Mathos was very active in our community. Staff findings. Staff supports this application for local designation of 3406 East DeBazin because it embodies the distinctive visible characteristics of an architectural style or period, and it's also associated with the life of a person who played a significant role in our community. With that, we recommend approval of case number 25005 for local historic designation of the single-family residence at 3406 East DeBazin Avenue. Ms. Leanne Mathos is here to take any questions or anything you may have. I'm here as well. So,
Thank you. Want to step forward, ma'am?
Thank you all for your consideration on this. Much to my daughter's chagrin, I've not changed the outside of the house basically at all, except planting some, greenery and stuff. And actually, in fact, I want to make the inside, more kind of roll back some of the inside eventually so that it looks more like it did. For instance, some of the terrazzo floors, and I know this isn't important for your consideration, but some of the terrazzo floors have been covered, and I hope to uncover them. So, if you have any questions for me, but
I would just ask, I read this before, but did you get a substantial damage, or are you, I think you're okay, right? Yeah.
no. So I wanted to ask Brandon some questions. I mean, I'm happy to sign the waiver, but I want to understand it a little more because I haven't gotten that letter
ahead.
yet, so I don't know whether I am, damaged or not. But I mean, the house is. I've gotten building permits now, and I'm moving forward. So I hope I don't have to appeal anything.
Can you answer that question, or Brandon, or just explain it a little bit further on what she's signing?
So we don't have any specific timeline for issuance of those substantial damage letters. We issue them as soon as we get the data in from the county. In signing that waiver, you're effectively waiving the 30-day notice that would typically be provided for listing your home on the registry. You do not need to sign it. If you don't want to sign it, it would be listed after 30 days pending. You would have the ability to withdraw. For those who want to take advantage of that incentive within the next 30 days, it would be something that they may want to consider, but you don't necessarily need to sign off on the form.
Okay, I guess what I'm saying is if I get a substantial damage letter, is this a variance, or do I still have to appeal it to get a variance?
You would no longer need to appeal as long as you're not making any exterior alterations to the structure.
Which, like I said, I'm not. I love it, just,
But also understand that some of those letters have been not correct, that people have been getting, okay? And so you'd know better than anybody if you got much damage in your home or not.
right,
And if it's, many of the homes are not valued at as much as the property, but if you're not substantially damaged, then
Correct.
you don't have to get a variance,
okay.
okay?
All right,
And so if you were substantially damaged, you'd want to sign that because it accelerates you 30 days. You follow what I'm saying? You don't have to wait for your letter.
okay.
So in your particular situation, you can do whatever you want, but I'm saying, if you don't think you're substantially damaged, you can sign it now, it doesn't make a difference,
Okay.
okay?
I mean, I definitely don't think it is, because those little block houses, they're like tanks,
Well, a lot of the things are like, terrazzo floors, that's probably not gonna be damaged. If you
Right.
have, drywall that got damaged, that can be expensive. Some of the old homes didn't have drywall, they had plaster, and those dry out. So,
I
and so
had both, but.
my point is, if you're historically registered, okay, if you're substantially damaged, then you can take the next step of getting a FEMA variance, okay?
Okay,
Step one would be to get historically designated, okay?
okay,
If you aren't substantially damaged, you're just historically damaged, you're designated, and end of story. You get a plaque maybe if you want to ask us to give you one, But so, but also in the future, you're already historically designated if something else happens down the line.
okay, all
Does
right,
that all make sense? Does that say that accurately? Okay.
all right.
What else was I going to say? Oh, also, I would like to thank you for a lot of this information that you supplied, because not only does it tell a great little story, but it all goes in the file for the future, and we love to preserve all that information. So it's great when people come in with, intimate knowledge because they've lived in the house their family has for a long time. So we appreciate that.
Yeah, I have more history, and whenever the Gulf Beaches Museum opens
Right.
back up, I, hope to share that with them too.
Good.
And
Very
you
good.
probably knew him, didn't you, Mr. Hurley? Love him or not, I loved him.
It was a terrible election. It was hurtful. He was a good mayor.
No, he was a character, like I said, so thank you again for your consideration.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions or comments?
Now, I'd like to make a motion.
All right, go ahead.
I'd like to make a motion that we grant local historical designation for number 25005.
I'll second that motion. Madam Clerk, roll call.
Member Hurley,
Yes.
Member Young,
Yes.
Vice Chair Hawkinsmith,
Yes.
Member Daschle,
Yes.
Chair Lowry,
Yes.
motion carries.
Thank you all
All right.
very much. And Brandon, I'll be talking to you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, 4D we handled. 4E is local designation, case number 24090, which is 4 Alhambra Street. Lynn, hi.
Good afternoon. I'm Lynn Rossetti, contract planner with the City of St. Pete Beach. This particular property was found by the consultants to be a non-contributing property to the district that they surveyed. And the purpose or the reason that they have listed some or found some to be non-conforming is because they did not know, they couldn't find any historic associations with people, and architecturally they felt that maybe it had been, these buildings had been altered a bit or something like that. So I have the privilege of researching for history. And this particular property does have an interesting history. It's a single-family, one-story residential structure that was constructed in 1959. Set the slides, please. Okay.
Yeah, we've got to skip that
No,
one.
Yeah,
Get you there.
okay. Okay. So, it's a masonry vernacular structure, according to the consultants. I agree with that, except it does seem to have some mid-century ranch features as well. The house is rectangular in shape, and the exterior materials are stucco over concrete block. It has a built-up gabled roof. Thomas Rowe was the developer and the person who platted the property of Don Cesar Place, as originally platted. I conducted some historic research on the property, and in actuality, Mr. Green, the owner, was able to find a lot of history on this property and other properties in the Don Cesar neighborhood from down at the St. Petersburg Historical Museum that's on the Pier Approach on 2nd Avenue Northeast. And so, especially because now the Gulf Beaches Museum is under reconstruction and everything, it was a pretty good find to go down to the St. Petersburg Historical Museum and come up with some interesting history, even of this house. And what was really most interesting, I thought, was that during this research, one of the curators at the museum found that this house was a Schultz, SCHOTZ design. In 1946, this gentleman, who was not an architect or an engineer, but he was very much an avid student of Frank Lloyd Wright and Miles van der Rohe, an architect, a European architect. So he kind of copied what they were doing and brought this to designs that he did, that he sold to people who were during that time. It was right after World War II. All the servicemen were coming home. They were getting married. They wanted houses. And so a number of them did buy into these particular house plans, maybe like a inexpensive man's Frank Lloyd Wright or something like that. Dave Green, who's the owner of the property, purchased this house in 2004. And I was talking to him about things that he may have done in the community and what sort of historic associations were linked to him. And he told me that his idea was born for a free beach ride for the community. And consequently, he talked to his wife about that, and she told him he was crazy. But since then, Mr. Green has been operating his free beach rides for the public for nearly 16 years. And he has kind of been expanding it, and the city of St. Pete Beach has adopted their own freebie, but Mr. Green continues to operate his as well. And let's see. That's the house, and it is one-story masonry vernacular primarily. Staff is recommending approval of this local historic designation of the residential structure located at 4 Alhambra Street because it reflects the broad cultural, economic, and social history of the Don Cesar Place neighborhood in St. Pete Beach. I'll thank you, and if you've got any other questions, I'd like to try and answer them.
I have a question.
Okay.
The shutters on the front of the house, do you know if those were original or were they added later?
I don't have any idea. It may have been added later because, if you recall, this house was not considered to be, a historic property because they were only looking at the architecture and they found that it had some alterations and they couldn't call it contributing because they were only looking at architecture. So, but in my opinion, the association with the Schultz design houses That's probably pretty significant because this is a guy that was selling his plans nationwide, and these houses were probably houses that would emulate some of the characteristics of Frank Lloyd Wright and others, and even others around here like Glenn Johnson, who, you know, they were architects. He was an architect in his own right. He designed our St. Pete Beach Public Library, and Sanford Goldman, same thing. He's got a number of houses around here in St. Pete Beach, but they were both architects. And this Schultz guy was not an architect, not an engineer, and yet he did house designs for people. I would say floor plans and things, how they would look, and he would do these for his clients, and apparently that's a pretty big movement for the lower end houses that are considered to be mid-century modern. I don't mean lower end that way, but not lower, a little bit lower than, say, Frank Lloyd Wright. Any other questions? Thank you.
Now, is Mr. Green here? Want to speak on this?
Yes, he is.
All right, come forward, please, sir.
Dave Green, 4 Alhambra, St. Pete Beach.
Yep, hi. Anything you'd like to tell us? We might have a few questions for you, but if not.
This is a great home. Same materials as our other home, 3 doors down. We just also discovered some terrazzo floor underneath the flooring.
Underneath the shag carpet? I'm just kidding.
Close.
Yeah, that's the old story, right?
There was somebody that put some glue on it and then put linoleum and then some carpet, and they stood there in a circle and they went like this with the glue. But it has some neat stained glass in it, same structure.
You think that stained glass is original?
At least in the past 40 years.
Yeah. I mean, obviously the windows look like they're designed for show as opposed to for function, you know, in a way.
Right. And they're great windows too. They're solid structure. The people before me had the home for about 16 years. And they came down and visited us about 3 months out of the year. And that was it. You know, I'm not aware of any changes to the structure. I couldn't find any. They didn't make any. Tried to research it the best we could.
Okay.
Back in the on the property, they couldn't find the actual property cards. Like the tax records only show back to 60. You know.
All right. Anybody have any questions for Mr. Green?
It was built in 59, is that right?
59. Yeah. But it is where we started the free beach ride. We used to charge our cars on the side of the building. Actually, the first car, and we started at Beach Goes Pops in April of 2009. And the phone kept ringing. I told my wife we needed a second car, so then we ended up with 2 cars there, charging the cars. Then we bought a fast charger because you could only charge those cars, you know, like regular plug-in thing. It would take hours. And we just watch and wait for it to charge up and not answer the phone. And then we put a fast charger on the side of it, and I think code enforcement caught on to us at that point. So we were looking for 3-phase electric, and Dan so while I put in a lot of the hours, the actual hours, it was the community, I really feel, that wrapped their arms around it. Dan from Snappers let us go park our car back there, behind there, and plug in our fast charger there. Paul Nicholas from the Undertow, he said, why don't you take my van? So we added that to the fleet. That was a 15-passenger van. We started, he wrapped his van, and that led into the wrapping of our gas-powered vehicles in addition to the carts. I think, well, I know that I even drove Frank Hurley home a couple times from the office.
Is the office a former bar or something? I'm just joking. Sorry, Sean. No.
It gets better. I used to fix his vans.
Sean home a couple times. We were out selling real estate, you know.
Right.
I also remember Evander Preston.
Sure.
He got off his bike one time and got in. He took me over to his place, and we probably spent a couple hours in there. He told me a lot of stories about the Bush estate. He played his giant, whatever it was called. It wasn't quite a piano organ, but it was that big thing on the wall. He must have played that for an hour. showed me his giant walk in the kitchen and told me all about the mischievous behavior in the city, which I won't repeat any of. Yeah, it was good times. I don't know if you remember Phil and B from Sea Hags, Filthy Phil.
Yeah.
Good, just good people. You know, it was the community that really made that happen.
It's a great story.
Right. And they still support it. So we survived COVID, Uber, Lyft, Freebie, and we consider ourselves influencers since so many other people do this on their coastal communities. Yeah, but it's good times.
Good, very good. Thank you,
So
sir.
we thank you for your consideration to keep our home and its ambience in the neighborhood.
All right. And just because I'm keeping score, I guess, did you get a substantial damage, or did you do okay there?
No letter received.
Did you get water in the house, though?
Yeah.
Has he signed one of those things? Have you signed a waiver?
Yes. Yes, sir.
Okay, good. All right. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. All right.
I'll make the motion.
Yep.
Motion to approve case number 24090, designate the single-family residence at 4 Alhambra Street as a local historic resource.
I'll second that.
Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Member Young,
Yes.
Vice Chair Hawkinsmith,
Yes.
Member Daschle,
Yes.
Member Hurley,
Yes.
Chair Lowry.
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right. F, which is local designation, case number 24101. That's the address of 3509 Casablanca Avenue. Lynn?
Thank you. Lynn Rossetti, contract planner for St. Petersburg Beach. This property is located at 3509 Casablanca Avenue. It's owned by Wilma Walsick, and this applicant is for requesting a local historic designation for this single-family home located at 3509 Casablanca Avenue. Again, this was another property that was found to be by the consultants as non-contributing. This is because they thought that there was a second-story addition that had been added to the house. On the property appraiser's website, there is noted that there was a second-story addition in the late 1980s. And in fact, Mrs. Walsick said that is not the case, that she has owned the house since the late 1950s, I believe, and, I'm sorry, 1968. She's been there since 1968. She gave me a number of photographs. Let me see if I believe they're in here, of what the house looked like at different time periods. So the first one was from 1968, the second was from 1969. And you can see that there was, you could see that there was already a second-story addition there. And so that is an error on the property appraiser's site, and I would recommend to her that if she wants to get that corrected with the county, she does that with the property appraiser. But we were able to find plenty of history about this property. The house was built in 1951, and it was and is a single-family residential structure, two-story in nature, one of the first houses in the Bella Vista neighborhood. Staff finds that 3509 Casablanca meets this requirement for local historic designation because it does reflect the broad cultural, historical character and social character of Don Cesar Place. During the recent historic survey, like I said, this was determined to be non-contributing, and Mr. Walter Walsick, her deceased husband, and Mrs. Wilma Walsick were noted members of the community. Both were talented artists. Mr. Walter Walsick was especially involved in community affairs of both St. Petersburg and St. Pete Beach. Mr. Walsick was a member of the Polish American Society for 50 years and its president for 20 years. And in fact, the city of St. Petersburg designated the the Polish American Society as a historical landmark for the city of St. Petersburg. And I believe that, I know that there's a picture in your packet. I'm not sure that it's not in this presentation, but give me, in any case, it has their artwork. They were both well-noted artists in the area, and their house is adorned with many tiles and paintings and things like that that are theirs. And in addition to that, they have also artwork that literally covered the walls of dancers with the Polish American Club. Mr. Walczyk was the first president of SPIF, which is the International Folk Fair that is prominent in the city of St. Petersburg, and he was presented a key to the city of St. Petersburg for organizing the many ethnic groups. He was involved in organizing the Festival of States parade in St. Petersburg. He ran for mayor of St. Pete Beach in the mid-1980s. And there's just a lot of historical information on him and also on his wife. So they seem like very interesting people. Mr. Walczyk passed away on March 15th, 2018. And Mrs. Walczyk, like I say, she is a little bit feisty, I can tell you that, because when I told her that the property was not contributing to the district because it was two-story and the second story had been added, I know that really got her hackles up. And she brought me many things besides photographs and even a survey of the house from, let's see, what is this, 1968, that shows that there is a second-story addition there. If you could switch over to the plate. Well, there. You can see that there's a second-story addition on there. So it was not new. It was built that way. And so consequently, the recommendation is to approve this local historic designation of this residential structure located at 3509 Casablanca Avenue because it reflects the broad cultural, economic, and social history of the Don Cesar Place neighborhood and St. Pete Beach. And both Mrs. Walczyk and her daughter are here. Thank you.
Okay, thank you,
Any
Lynn.
questions you may have, or
Anybody have any
probably
questions,
ask
Lynn?
many more to Mrs. Walczyk.
Okay.
Thank you, Lynn.
Ms. Walczyk, you want to come forward? How are you?
Great.
Good.
I'm old, but my voice is even older.
That's okay. Would you state your name?
Wilma Walczyk,
Thank you. Okay.
3509 Casablanca. After historical, it's going to be Casablanca.
Ah, okay. Yes.
Beautiful way to have it. And I do want a plaque. I'm so proud of my house.
Good. Well, we used to have that, the plaques, we kind of fell away from that for a while, but we're reinstituting those, so we'll make sure you get one.
Thank you. I lived there 58 years. The house was built by Mr. Swenson of Paso Grill in 1951 to Frank and Myrtle Young at a cost at that time, $21,500. I hate to tell you what I paid for it in 60, but we did get a substantial damage letter of 60%, which was really a no-no.
Right.
But we appealed it. We got a new inspection, 19%.
Excellent.
That beautiful little house is all concrete block, concrete walls. They only cut off 4 inches for the air to dry it out. We kept fans on it for 2 months. A beautiful hardwood floor. The only really kind of bad thing is we had to take out 5 lower kitchen cabinets, but they're there to put back, and they're made with 3/4-inch plywood, really sturdy.
Good.
And I will have to retile the floor. That's the only repercussions.
Well,
and thanks to my beautiful family, my son-in-law Paul, and daughter Linda Mariski, they've kept me now for 4.5 months.
right, that's the bigger problem. Yeah.
And Paul will put the baseboard in and put the cabinets back. And Linda, with her magical cell phone, she got and gave so much information. I'm a landliner. I don't know anything about a cell phone, but they've been so much help to me. And I thank you and thank them.
Well, we thank you too. I really like your house, okay?
I love it.
No, and I can see in a way, someone say, oh, they added the second floor, only because people didn't build that many second floors back then, but it's great. I mean, it's a very unique home. And I think it's great that you got the information to show that.
All my furniture was saved. All my furniture was saved. And my husband was an artist, and he had a lot of carvings on pedestals. They weren't even knocked over.
Good.
So we did get water in the house, but it had to be very little.
Right, right.
By the time we got that soppy rug up and the padding and everything else, it's going to be beautiful again.
Well, good. That's excellent. And I'm glad to hear that you went through the appeal process and got that taken care of.
Thank you to all of you.
Excellent.
Love you.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions?
I think your family's going to miss you when you move back home.
I doubt that.
She's shaking her head no. No, she's kidding. Excellent. Okay, well, I'll make a motion that in case number 24101, the residents at 3509 Casablanca Avenue, that we approve it for local historic designation.
I'll second.
Madam Clerk, roll call.
Member Daschle?
Yes.
Member Hurley?
Yes.
Member Young?
Yes.
Vice Chair Hawkinsmith?
Yes.
Chair Lowry?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you, Ms. Walsh.
Thank you and thank God.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, yes, 4G is local historic designation number 25008 for 3600 Casablanca Avenue. Mr. Martinez?
Good afternoon. The application before you is for local historic designation for the property located at 3600 Casablanca, case number 25008. The applicant and owner is Mona McFadden. She is requesting a local historic designation for the single-family home at 3600 Casablanca Avenue. Some historic shots from 2011, 2022 from Google Streets. This is a field photo from current, as well as an aerial photo from the property appraiser's office. This house was also the home of an important person in our community. This was the home of Wilson Hubbard, known as Captain Hubbard. He developed Hubbard's Marina and Madeira Beach. He served as the St. Petersburg Beach Chamber of Commerce, and he was a World War II veteran. His home has undergone minimal changes in its preserved original design and historical integrity. Staff finds the recommendation of approval, A, because it embodies the distinctive visible characteristics of an architectural style, and it's associated with the life of a person who played a significant role in our community, particularly in the Don Cesar neighborhood. Staff recommends approval of case number 25008 for local historic designation of the single-family structure at 3600 Casablanca Avenue. And I believe Ms. McFadden is here to answer any questions you may have, as I am as well.
Anybody have any questions for Mr. Martinez? We get to that? Okay, thank you, Ms. Martinez. Ms. McFadden, you want to come forward?
Hello, my name is Mama McFadden, and we have owned the property. My parents, Raymond and Edna Carter, purchased the property in 1959 from Captain Hubbard, who had built the house in 1952. And we have lived at this house. You know, my brothers and sisters and I went to college here. We went to high school. My brother spent a lot of time with the Hubbard children. They had several. And Captain Hubbard had started the first Gulf Coast half-day fishing party boat in Pass-a-Grille. And he also eventually started to have overnight fishing trips. And one good thing is what you caught, they would cook it for you. And that was a really nice thing, clean it and cook it for you. So we liked that. And I have many fond memories of the home. And let's see, back when we bought the house, Gulf Boulevard was a 2-lane road. So it was a little easier to walk across to the beach than it is now, but it's still a great, great location. And my mother was a government employee, and at the time, she worked at the Don Cesar, because at that time, they were the administrative office for the VA. So she was able to walk to work. She loved the beach. She went to the beach almost every day. And as we grew up and had our own children, almost all of our holidays were spent at this house. And very little has changed on the outside of the house. The design is still the same, so we have no desire to change the design or anything like that. And I just hope it can remain in the neighborhood with the same appearance that it has now.
Okay. Anybody have any questions for Ms. McFadden? All right, thank you, ma'am. Anybody have a motion?
I'll go ahead and make a motion for local historic designation number 25008, 3600 Casablanca Avenue.
I'll second.
Madam Clerk, roll call.
Member Hurley?
Yes.
Member Young?
Yes.
Vice Chair Hawkinsmith?
Yes.
Member Daschle?
Yes.
Chair Lowry?
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right. Now we're on to 4H, which is a certificate for appropriateness for the demolition, case number 25002 of the residence at 112 4th Avenue. Who's handling that from?
Before we begin, Member Daschle has a couple disclosures to make for this case and the two others that come after it.
Okay.
So I'll read all three now. So I, Danielle DeShiel, hereby disclose that on February 6, 2025, a measure is coming before the agency that will ensure the special gain or loss of my relative, John D. DeShiel. And then that is for the certificate of appropriateness for demolition number 25002, 112 4th Avenue. John D. DeShiel of 112 4th Avenue, LLC, requests a certificate of appropriateness for demolition of a 3-family residence at 112 4th Avenue. Should I go ahead and do the others, or?
It's your preference.
The next one would be, again, I, Danielle DeShiel, disclose that on February 6, 2025, there is something that will come before the agency to create a special gain or loss of my relative, John DeShiel. This is certificate of appropriateness for demolition number 25004-804 Passigrel Way. John D. DeShiel of 804 Passigrel Way, LLC, requests a certificate of appropriateness for demolition of a contributing single-family residential structure and garage at 804 Passigrel Way. And I, Danielle DeShiel, hereby disclose that on February 6, 2025, a measure will come before the agency which will ensure the specific or special gain to my loss or relative of John D. DeShiel. And this is a certificate of appropriateness for demolition number 25003, 103 10th Avenue. John D. DeShiel of 103 10th Avenue, LLC, requests a certificate of appropriateness for demolition of a 3-family and 1-family residence on the subject property.
Thank you. If we could pull the PowerPoint, please. So this is the first of the three that were just read, certificate of appropriateness for demolition of 112 4th Avenue, case number 25002, David S. Shiel of 112 4th Avenue, LLC, is requesting demolition of the contributing three-family structure on the subject property. Here's some photographs showing the home back in 1938 as well as in 2015. There have been some modest improvements to the frontage since the original photo was taken. You can see that what was originally that rusticated block adorned porch has been enclosed. I believe it's with stucco at the front there. The original structure does remain relatively well intact. There was a significant addition to the rear of the residence, which I believe is asbestos shingle. That is in an unknown year. However, the integrity of the original structure is maintained according to the owner of the original builder, who was also, the daughter of the original builder who owned the property. The rusticated block was created on site for that original structure. And the structure is a masonry vernacular. It is one of the earliest masonry vernaculars in Pass Grill. It was built in the 1910s, whereas most masonry vernacular in the neighborhood were built in the 1920s or later. Of or greater importance than the architecture is the inhabitant, specifically the son of the original builder. J.C. Blocker Sr. built the home. He was an early mayor of Pass Grill. That's not who's shown in the photo. That is his son, J.C. Blocker Jr. He was Pinellas County's first official historian, designated by the resolution of the Pinellas County Commission. He was also the county attorney from the 1920s through the 1940s. He was instrumental in some of the early development of our county. He was a booster for the Sunshine Skyway, for the acquisition of Mud Key, acquisition of land for the airport, and similar actions of significance in the early 1900s. Here's some photos of the damage. The city has produced a substantial damage letter for this structure. It did exceed 50%, so based on the county's assessment, the structure was noted to have sustained damage that exceed 50%. I did want to point out to the applicant, I'm sure they are well aware that a local historic designation would allow for a waiver of that determination. They would be able to restore the structure without needing to adhere to the substantial improvement requirements. They did state in their application that it was not, it would not produce a reasonable return on investment to restore the structure. As the board knows, for contributing structures such as the subject structure that are not on the local historic registry, demolition cannot be prohibited. It can be delayed up to 30 days to discuss potential preservation incentives. And here are the criteria that staff has responded to in the staff report regarding issuance of demolition permits for contributing structures. Staff, as mentioned before, the structure was determined to be substantially damaged based on the letter sent out by the city. We are not recommending a delay in issuing the approval to demolish the structure. However, we do ask for testimony from the applicant whether a substantial improvement waiver could assist in preserving the structure given the documented extent of damage. This is also a three-unit structure. Based on the underlying zoning for the structure, it would only allow for a one-unit structure to be reconstructed. Now, given that this is in the Pass Grill overlay, the applicant does have the ability to redevelop the structure with 3 units. However, they are currently limited to the same developed square footage. Based on the overlay amendments that are proposed, there would be the ability to add in a garage and storage space at the ground level just to get the structure above the floodplain, but the developed square footage standard for the living level, that limitation would remain in place. So again, the structure, the property would be eligible for a one-unit structure to be redeveloped to single-family home. They would be able to retain the 3 units if they were to redevelop with the same living square footage. So we just want acknowledgement from the applicant that that is the limitation that would be placed on redevelopment. So if adequate testimony is provided, staff request a motion to approve case 25002 for the demolition of the 3-family residence at the subject property. That's all from staff.
Okay. I have a question. Just haven't quite seen this situation, but, and just a hypothetical here. I'm familiar with the structure, and obviously the one in the front that you had the original pictures was built before essentially the 2 additions in the back. And I think that's the only portion that has the rusticated block on it, I think.
Correct.
And is there any kind of hybrid scenario, this is more for future use, that, is it possible to keep if the person wanted to, keep the front structure, get rid of the back two structures, and then still develop something? You follow what I'm saying?
Based on zoning, that would be an option. Of course, they would be limited by the setbacks, just as they are today. I don't know the current setbacks of the structure would meet the current zoning code, so there might be more of a horizontal limitation than there is today, but it's a possibility based on the code.
And along that line, if that was to happen, could you build a single-family structure behind the kept part of the structure? You follow what I'm saying? Or would you have to build two with the same footprint, like you mentioned before?
It wouldn't have to be two. Now, the limitation would be on anything greater than a single-family home being redeveloped, whether the current rusticated block portion of the structure is retained or not. The limitation would be that developed square footage based on what is currently in the code. So that would apply whether one unit were to be reconstructed or two.
We're on the same, you understand what I'm talking about? I mean, I think we're talking about the same thing as far as, and so even though it could be two separate structures, because that's what I'm really saying, not to connect them, but make it more of a separate structure. Or I guess it could be connected like the house we saw earlier where they built onto the back instead of the front.
Right, a lateral addition might be more appropriate. The way that the language is currently drafted, and this isn't proposed to change in the amendment, is that the new structure would need to retain the same form and mass. We have a design review later on today that is preserving what I believe the intent of that is, where the structure looks similar to what was there previously. So having separate residences, I mean, again, if they were laterally connected or something like that, that might be an option.
Okay. I was just wondering, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Units, it's all one structure now, is that correct?
Yes.
Well, it's connected, but it's three separate units within it, correct?
Does that understand?
Okay. Anybody else have any questions from Brandon? All right, Mr. Deschel, is that pronounced correctly? You want to come forward? We have to get some testimony, I know that.
He is not here.
Okay. State your name for the record, please.
Sam Irvin, I guess authorized agent for David, the demolition contractor.
Yes.
Just
Okay.
through it.
Can you just state your address, please?
You can give business address if you want.
1608 North 43rd Street, Tampa, Florida 33605.
Okay, let me interrupt for a second. So Brandon, is that going to satisfy the testimonial aspect?
I know we have an authorization for the demolition permit, but I don't know that we have an authorization to represent at the hearing, so.
Well, obviously the problem I would have is there has to be the recognition that he knows he can either has to build one structure or three with the same footprint, which is pretty small considering, what people want to build today.
Mm-hmm.
And so my opinion would be that I don't think we can take testimony or assume that without actual testimony or affidavit of some sort from the owner themselves, because if later there's a misconception about that, it can't be because he said it was okay. You follow what I'm saying?
I understand. The one option I could think of is that the board could condition me having a conversation with the owner if this is something you'd like to move forward with today. I could definitely.
So we would just amend this by you later speaking to him and getting that information in person.
Yes.
Okay. Although I just point this out, it kind of frustrates the purpose of us doing a demolition permit where we know we have to grant it. And we do we sometimes do a 30-day or depending 90-day wait because we're supposed to be able to talk to the owner to see, I guess, if we can talk them out of it. And we obviously don't have that option under the circumstances that you're suggesting.
Understood.
And somebody else wants to say something. And, considering this is one of three.
That's just presented as an option. The board can take whatever action he feels appropriate.
I guess for my curiosity as well, because it's kind of just adding an option to him, which obviously he would like to know, I'm sure, but I mean, he 100% does want the full demolition. Obviously, that's not going to help this situation coming from me.
Yeah.
But just adding an option, I'm trying to kind of wrap my head around like what would be the
the question, well, there may not be a reason, but because it's a contributing structure, we can make a 30-day stay.
Sure.
Of course, that frustrates people. I mean, if there's a real reason to do that, which there might not be, we oftentimes do that. And the reason would be the person may want to reconsider or get more information. Maybe, for example, in this case, he doesn't know that if he builds 3, they have to be the same footprint, which would be much smaller than today's market might be.
Understood.
You follow what I'm saying? And that's the real problem. Even though you know he wants to demolish the whole thing, okay, that's fine. But secondarily, does he realize that he has to?
You want to make sure he has the other knows the other option.
Or if he wants to build a single-family residence, that's fine. He can do that as well.
Sure.
And it's just really to make sure that he's aware of that, because I think some people aren't. And I don't know if there's been that actual conversation. So, and the same thing is going to wind up applying to one of the other ones set for demolishing.
Okay.
So I don't know how the board feels about whether we can just have that, have him talk to Brandon at a later time to, make sure that happens.
Could we do a conditional approval subject to
Well, sure. That's how we do it.
verification from the property owner that he has that signed understanding of what can be replaced on the property?
That'd be fine.
And that I'm confident he'd be happy with.
You don't necessarily have to put
And he would
a
love to speak.
30-day stay on it. It's up to the property owner how long that stay is, however long it takes for him to respond to that.
Is that accurate, what you would say to that, Brandon?
Yes, no, that makes perfect
So it wouldn't
sense.
go from today's date, it would just be, it's conditional on him getting that information, you're getting that information from him.
Correct.
Okay, and along that line, so you would be having the conversation with him, what we've just talked about as far as what he can and can't do to the property.
Correct, and the next 2 cases on the docket are the same applicant, so it would, I have similar requests to both, so.
Okay.
Yes.
So do you want to just do all 3 of them at the same time, or should we just have them go sit back and come back up and do all that kind of scenario?
I'm happy to stand.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, I'll go through the next 2 then, if we can get the PowerPoint pulled back up. Okay, so this is moving on to 103 10th Avenue. David Ashiel of 103 10th Avenue LLC is requesting a certificate of appropriateness for demolition of the 2-story, 3-unit structure. It is on the Florida Master Site file as a 1 unified building, but there's also a non-contributing outbuilding residence. Here's some photographs showing the structure from a 1996 Historic Resources survey that we conducted, as well as 2015, when it was reassessed to be on a contributing structure to the Paso Grill Historic District. Here's some photos of damage of the interior of the structure and the outside. Again, same conditions. This is a contributing structure. It's not in the local historic registry. Any stay would be limited to 30 days. Despite the alterations, which are noted in the staff report, the property retains scale-appropriate apartment house-style residences. These are unique, at least at the city level, to Paso Grill. It sets it apart from the typical detached single-family suburban zoning regulations of much of the rest of St. Pete Beach. I will say this is also something that we've covered both in our original designation and our boundary increase as being something that's unique to Paso Grill. These they look like homes. They function as apartments. That's something that's fairly original to Paso Grill. Additionally, the city has not assessed the structure to have sustained substantial damage. It has received an estimated 36.5% of the structure's depreciated value in damage. I do understand the applicant filled out the request similarly to the prior application. They did state that it was not economically viable to restore the structure, so I acknowledge that, but I just wanted to point out that we have not considered it to have sustained substantial damage. It's a similar limitation to the prior case. The structure is limited to a single-family home upon reconstruction. The applicant could choose to redevelop with the same developed square footage, approximately 2,600 square feet, if they were to rebuild a 4-unit structure on the property. So again, we were asking for testimony. We would ask for a similar condition from the board related to speaking to the applicant, just to address the 2 items that I brought up for this case prior to approving the demolition of the residence on the property. And the third in the series, 804 Paso Grill Way, case 25004, David Dashiell of 804 Paso Grill Way, LLC, is requesting a certificate of appropriateness for demolition of the contributing single-family structure. Here's some photographs of the structure, showing it when it was determined contributing in 2015. Of course, what appears to be fairly extensive damage in 2024 post-storm. Here's some photos of, again, the exterior as well as the interior. Same limitation on demolition. A stay could not be assessed for longer than 30 days. While the structure is scale appropriate, unlike the prior 2 cases, the structure clearly sustained substantial damage. The county assessment suggested that 100% of the structure's depreciated value and costs to repair had been sustained. It is a fairly simple vernacular. It is scale appropriate, but it's not one of the last remaining examples of its style in Paso Grill. One acknowledgement we are asking for from the applicant: there's not the density limitation, but there is the reconstruction of the use limitation that this property is subject to being in the CRDEA. We do not allow for reconstruction of standalone single-family residences. The only way that a single-family residence could be reestablished on the property were to be if another locally designated structure were to be relocated. Of course, we have the Zephaniah Phillips house, which met that criteria on 8th Avenue. The applicant may reconstruct a mixed-use development. They could also reconstruct a standalone commercial structure on the property. So again, we would ask for a condition that the applicant acknowledge this prior to demolition. We do ask for, with that condition, that the board motion to approve case 25004 for demolition of the residence of the subject property. That's all from staff.
Okay. All right. This is my opinion here, because this is on that last house, this is a whole nother scenario, because he can't build a single family residence there, even though it is a single family residence. So again, we'd have to get testimony that he recognizes he can't build a single family residence, which he may know, but he's not here. Okay? And considering there's 3 properties, 2 of which are really old structures that have significant historic value to the area. If it was one property, you could say, okay, well, maybe the person's going to, we don't know what they're going to build. Not that we have to know, because this is just a demolition. Sometimes people, like, it's coming up later, although that home was demolished last week, but, you know, right away we're getting a design review. So I'm very, I don't feel good without knowing a little bit more, and I think that he needs to be in here and talk to us a little bit. I know we can do whatever we want, but if it was one house, you would say, okay, someone's going to build a house for their own private, okay, use. With 3 houses, he's not going to build 3 private houses. So we selling 3 lots, or we selling 3 spec homes, and all that stuff is often inconsistent with what we're supposed to be doing here as a historical board. And so, in my opinion, I feel because there should be testimony, we should be able to question that information. Not that we can never do anything, but at least we would have knowledge, which I think is a thing that we all need here. I mean, obviously there's a way that he could answer without answering, and I get that, but considering this is, like I said, 3 homes, all fairly significant. 2 of them, is my understanding, don't have, well, one has substantial damage, or 2 do?
All 3 of them.
No, one of them was 36%, this, according to the staff report.
But based on what the city issued, independent of
Right.
what the
I
contractor.
realize, and am I being specific on substantial damage, not just the idea of I can't get a return on investment, so it's damaged, that way. But the fact that all three of those homes essentially could be saved by a FEMA variance, not that it has to be, and that's everyone's personal, prerogative as far as that goes, but I feel as a historic preservation board, the keyword being preservation here, that we shouldn't be making it conditional, on them coming and explaining to you, Brandon, not that I totally trust you, and I don't mean in that way, but you may get information that we don't ever get, and I feel because it's three homes, I would like to see the person come in and tell us something about it. So, I don't know if that's something we have to vote on or not. I mean, I think technically the idea that you need to take testimony has not happened today. And we can make it conditional on him coming back and talking to us, as opposed to him talking to you back in the office. And that's fine, but that's essentially going to build in a 30-day delay just because he can't get back in front of us till next month.
And I mean, he's losing, if you think about it from his sure bank point of view, he's losing an exorbitant amount of money every single day that they're not down. He's not able to do whatever his next plan is or not. And I mean, that was actually one of the reasons that I came today. One, because I wanted to know he was going to come, and then he actually ended up couldn't. I was like, don't worry about it, I'm coming anyways.
Right. Well, I think, but I think the issue here.
And I understand that, but 30 days, even from, I mean, it's been 4 months since the storms, and we've been working on it. The permits were a little bit newer to our company and everything, so we've been doing everything that we could. Kristen, I believe, Kristen Coleman was extremely helpful. Brandon was extremely helpful on another one.
I'm sure, and I don't want to be a bad guy here in a way, but I think for what we're supposed to be doing here as a historic preservation board, okay, that somebody's financial who couldn't make it today. I don't know why he couldn't. I'm not suggesting one thing right or wrong, but it was clearly stated that testimony had to be given in the staff's report. And so you've yourself said it, you really can't give that testimony. And so
I mean, I speak with him every single day about this updates.
No, okay, that's not the point.
I understand.
Yeah, okay, and so, I mean, essentially this is a hearing where the public's supposed to hear stuff, an affidavit or something has to be done so staff is satisfied that the notice has been given and he actually understands that.
But isn't the general idea of him submitting the application, all the pictures, going through the entire process for the sole reason of a demolition be kind of that general idea of him?
Well, again, yes, it is, but usually when we have a demolition permit, there's no questions. There's no, hey, you realize you can only build a single family residence here if you demolish that, which is significant.
That's what makes each of these cases unique, is that storm damage aside, if this were just a case coming forward, we want to demolish this 3-unit building, you have to acknowledge that you may or may not be able to put the same thing back up on this site, or you have to acknowledge that this was a residential structure, and because of the zoning, you cannot replace it with a residential structure. Those are really significant things that a property owner has to acknowledge.
Absolutely.
So that he hasn't come back to us in a few months with plans saying, I would not have knocked this down had I known I couldn't replace it with the same thing. And we don't want to take that responsibility, saying, sure, knock it down, and you can figure that out later.
But wouldn't the only liability be you approving what he requested? And then if he did come in 3 months or so, then that would be a whole separate situation.
Well, except for we wouldn't have gotten the testimony where he understood it. Okay? If he says, I understand, then he's at his own peril. He can't later say, oh, I thought I could build 3 units of any size I wanted. And you say, well, you can't. You should have. That's why.
Has he submitted anything yet, or said anything in any conversations to you guys?
Nope.
No.
Exactly, about building. That's my point. So that's probably not his intent. He just, I mean, if there was no storm, if there was, and I understand, I mean, that's he said, she said right there.
The storm's completely unrelated.
But how is the storm unrelated in the sense that if there were 3 buildings, if this was a random Wednesday last year, and he's like, you know what, I want to knock all 3 of these buildings down, that's a little bit like, okay, a little bit different.
You're missing the point, okay? The reason testimony has to be taken from the owner is 2 things. On one of these houses, it's not that important. Okay, the one at 802,
Pass Grill.
yeah, isn't so much an issue. Well, yes, it is, excuse me, because that's the one that says
Yes.
he's taking a single-family residence and knocking it down, okay?
Understood.
So common sense would say he thinks he can build another single-family residence there. He can't. Under the code, the zone, he
Understood.
cannot.
Understood.
Now, okay, so that's important. That we
Absolutely,
we
yeah.
really know what he wants to do. We're just okay. The other 2 houses are multi-unit houses. He may think, common sense would tell you, I can tear them down and I can build another multi-use house. He can't. Okay, unless you build 3 tiny areas, which.
But there's been no building discussed whatsoever.
I know that.
And so it's kind of like a what if, and I promise I'm not trying to argue, I'm trying to understand because I know
It's fine.
he's
I
going to
enjoy
be
it.
super unhappy after this, which is fine, whatever, I will take that heat.
Well, also,
He just,
just consider when we did the local designation for the properties before these cases, we had to make sure that each of those applicants signed and understood a waiver that said, you know, if you do this, this is what it means to you, and that they understand that, you know, that it doesn't mean you can't sell your house. It means that the designation sticks to your house for a year. If you make modifications that you receive benefits and incentives, then that historic designation stays for the life of the house. You have to acknowledge that what's happening when we give this approval, and you're not in a position to acknowledge that.
a signed, authorized, and notarized agent is not suitable? I mean, I have documents for all 3 of those properties here that show that I'm.
Well, do you know, in fact, he doesn't intend to build a single-family residence?
Yes.
Okay.
I know that for a fact.
Okay. And do you know, in fact, that he doesn't want to build 2 units or 3 units on some of those other locations?
I know that he has pretty much absolutely 0 plans of building anything.
well,
He
see,
just
now
wants
you're
the
giving us-
hazard down.
Yes.
But I know that it's hearsay.
Yeah, well, of
Hearsay.
course, of course.
Yeah.
But see, you're giving us information right now, but assuming that's accurate, it'd be great to hear from him. Because Paso Grille's a historic district, okay? And he wants to knock 3 of them down, all right? And like I said, he's not building, it sounds like development, okay? And so that's fine, he can do that, but we'd like to get a little idea.
I don't understand how it sounds like development if
Well,
a
he's not gonna
storm
build-
wipes
he's not
away
gonna build
3
3 houses
buildings.
for himself.
It is if they're just sitting there and has maybe, I mean, I cannot protest to what if he's going to sell them, keep the lots, build in 5 years. Who knows? Those are different. I don't know. But right now, he wants the buildings down. That's why he paid for the sod bond. I mean,
Okay, all right,
isn't that in
can I-
itself
let me
another?
just state this, and then maybe we move on from this. I'm going to assume that he saw the staff reports. And in the staff report, it said it needed evidence that we don't have right now. Okay, period, right? You agree with me on that?
Halfway, because I mean, I feel like that's and I promise I'm not trying to be
No, and
difficult.
I understand that.
I'm trying to understand what is the point of him going through the process of submitting the applications, paying $20,000, $30,000 in sod bonds that's just sitting there for him to. I understand the point of the sod bond, but like, how is that not evidence enough? And I also understand that you want to hear from him, but isn't every single other example an action item of him saying, yes, I just want to demolish these buildings and get them down, and then he'll be able to think. Maybe he wants to just be able to sell them and actually kind of recoup his money, but that's all irrelevant because all we're talking about is demolition, not the what if.
No, we're talking about demolition with the condition of him satisfying the requirement of this testimony, that he knows what he can't do if he knocks it down. We don't have that.
And that I understand. I guess maybe we're probably talking circles, and it's probably because of me.
Well, no, I'm just saying, you know. I mean, for example, let me just say this. Okay, if in fact he was aware that we needed this information, and he couldn't be here today, I suppose he could apply, he probably could have given an affidavit, okay, which is sworn testimony, okay? We don't have that either. So the only thing I was trying to say is I'm a little uncomfortable because of the number of the houses that this information we're gonna have to get before the demolition. The best thing we could do today is make this a conditional approval. You follow what I'm saying?
Agreed, yes, agreed.
So, which that means that until he actually came in, if we did it that way, and spoke to Brandon, you couldn't do anything until that happened. Whether that was 2 days, 8 days, 50 days. Okay? So he would still have the requirement of having to come here in person, and speak to Brandon about that.
Chair.
You follow what I'm saying?
Yes.
Okay.
And so if he were to just call Brandon obviously not right now, but I mean tomorrow and say, yes, get it down.
Well, I don't know.
all we do.
Can he be identified over a phone? I'm just saying there's some legal requirements.
Oh, wait, can he be identified over
You could, I'm just saying, is it really that difficult just to show up and do what was asked?
It depends if a person loses 9 or 10 properties. I mean, again, that's he say, she say, I guess, too. And I understand the testament. Okay, I guess we can move on. I guess what I'm asking is, where do we go from here? So do we have to wait an entire other month?
A moment ago, we talked about doing a conditional approval, okay? Which means you'd have to come in and speak to Brandon. My position, which other people may disagree with me, is because of the nature of the number of homes that's going on, I would like to hear what he has to say, okay? Because we could just say, you know what? He still has to give the information, and we're gonna put a 30-day delay on it because we can.
Sure.
All right?
Yes.
Yeah, that would be kind of hard because we normally don't put 30-day delays unless there's a real reason to do that.
Sure.
Okay? This approach is a real reason because we don't have the information from him. He's got 3 houses. They're significant to him, are significantly old houses.
Understood.
They're pretty unique, and it'd be nice if you had the owner and said, have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? Have you thought about this? Okay, that's the reason the 30-day delay is supposed to occur. We don't have that opportunity.
Chair, I believe the registered agent's here. He just walked in, so.
Okay, well, that makes it simpler. Thank you.
Yes, please.
Sorry.
Please.
Bill, I'm David DeShield. Hi, Dave, how are you? Okay. So, I don't know, well, first off.
I've actually been listening, so I
Okay.
think I know a little bit of what I need to.
Okay, so I'm going to.
Can we actually swear him in?
Sure.
To swear him in? Yes, because he has to make testimony, right?
Yes.
Yeah, Madam Clerk?
I will. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony or factual representation that you're about to give to the board is truthful?
I do.
Thank you.
Okay, hi, thank you. This makes it so much easier. And Brandon, what specifically on each property do we need to get testimony about?
Sure. So I just wanted to, especially for the first 2 requests, just inform you about the preservation incentives. I'm sure you're well aware. We do, of course, through our local historic designation, allow for structures to be improved to more than 50% of their depreciated value without having to elevate above the floodplain. I'm sure you're aware of that incentive. Would that at all change your mind in choosing to demolish the structures?
Correct.
It would not. Okay. For all 3 structures, there are nonconformities. For the structures at 112 4th Avenue and 103 10th Avenue, they are greater than the density that could be on the site today for a new development. Because these structures are in Pass Grill, you are eligible to redevelop with the same number of units, but you are currently limited to the same developed square footage. Are you aware of that, and do you understand?
Those footprints.
Correct, yes. Okay. For the structure at 804 Pass Grill Way, that is in the CRD 8th Avenue zoning district. You are eligible for commercial development, also for mixed-use redevelopment if you choose to redevelop. However, you would not be able to rebuild a single-family home on the lot. You would be eligible to move a locally designated historic structure onto the site, provided that it can meet the development standards for the lot. But a new single-family home cannot be built on that lot. Are you aware of that and okay with that?
Meaning it would need to be something in the context of commercial.
Correct. And mixed use is allowed, so you might have enough land area to be able to establish a ground floor commercial or office.
Residential.
Correct, but it could not be a standalone single family. Okay. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
That was all we needed. Okay, thank you.
And I apologize, because if I'd realized some testimony was
understand.
needed, I certainly would have been here, so.
Okay, and that's fine. Thank you,
All
sir.
right, thank you
Appreciate
much.
And thank you, I did not mean to.
No, that's all right. I run my mouth a lot, so it's okay. You get a bonus. No, okay, so I guess the issue or the question we have right now, which isn't much of one since we have to grant the motion, does anybody feel there's a reason that we should do a 30-day delay?
I don't see a reason.
And I agree with that. Okay, anybody have a motion?
Oh,
Should we do each one in isolation?
yes, there needs to be 3 motions.
Yes, of course.
So I'll make the first motion to approve certificate of appropriateness for demolition of file number 25002 for the demolition of 112 4th Avenue, 3-family residence.
Second.
Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Member Hurley?
Yes.
Member Young?
Yes.
Vice Chair Hawkinsmith?
Yes.
Member Lowry?
Yes.
Motion carries.
And that should be with the, we're not asking for a 30-day stay,
Correct.
right? Okay, all right.
I'll make the motion for certificate of appropriateness for demolition of number 25003, 103 10th Avenue, demolition of a 3-family and 1-family residence on the subject property.
Second.
I'm just, Madam Clerk, roll call, but again, on each one, do we need to talk about the 30-day?
Yeah, we're waiving the 30-day notice.
Okay, roll call, please, Madam Clerk.
Vice Chair Hawkinsmith?
Yes.
Member Hurley?
Yes.
Member Young?
Yes.
Chair Lowry?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay,
I'll make a motion for certificate of appropriateness for demolition for number 25004, 804 Pass-a-Grille Way,
and again, is that without a 30-day delay?
without a 30-day delay.
I'll second that motion. Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Member Hurley?
Yes.
Member Young?
Yes.
Vice Chair Hawkinsmith?
Yes.
Chair Lowry?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, thank you, folks.
My heart rate's up, Bill.
You should feel mine, I'm just kidding. I'm used to that stuff, right? Okay. So I guess we're now to number 5, discussion items. Is that correct?
You got one more. You got item K.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, I apologize. I had a, yes, 4K, which is certificate of appropriateness for the demolition of 205 Gulf Way, case number 25006.
Yes. Before we get started, is the applicant or owner for this one present? Okay, I just want to make sure. We'll call you up in a moment. If we could get the PowerPoint pulled up.
She must be terrified.
This is a certificate of appropriateness for demolition of 205 Gulf Way, case number 25006. Applicant is Gamil Gutierrez for Axel Johansson. The applicant's requesting a certificate of appropriateness for demolition of the contributing 2-family structure. I did want to say that that was incorrectly advertised in the agenda as a 1-family. This is a 2-family structure. Here's some photographs of the property. You can see it on the left there when it was designated as a contributing resource to the Pass-a-Grille Historic District, and on the right, a photo of the outside of the structure showing the storm damage. There were some photos included in your packet that were taken through the window. It was a little bit blurry, so I didn't include those on the screen. This is a contributing structure. It is not locally designated, so any delay would be limited to 30 days to allow for the incentives of being listed as a local historic resource to be discussed with the applicant. And staff has responded to the criteria in your staff report. Staff requests additional testimony from the applicant pertaining to the extent of damage. As I pointed out, there were photos included with the packet, but they were taken from outside the windows and they were a little bit blurry. This was one where the damage assessment found the structure to be non-substantially damaged, but again, there were very few photos of the interior of the structure. As with the other structures reviewed today, the structure can only be rebuilt with the 2 dwelling units if it retains the developed square footage based on the adopted language for the Paso Grill Overlay District, they would be eligible to rebuild a single-family structure on the property if requested. So if adequate testimony is provided by the applicant, we request a motion to approve case 25005 for demolition of the residence at 205 Gulf Way.
Brandon, I have a question.
Yes.
I have an intimate knowledge of this property. I don't know it to be a two-family. It was a two-bedroom, 1.5-bath home with a carport and a laundry room.
I may be mistaken. That was what our record showed.
It's a two-bedroom, 1.5-bath home with a laundry room and a carport.
Okay. Well, in that case, I am not requesting any testimony from the applicant on that item.
Well, is that accurate, though, that you want to come, just step forward, please, so you can give us your name for the record?
My name is Jamel. I'm with the demolition contractor.
Okay.
So, yeah, I don't believe it's two living. But we have a zoning verification letter, so our client is aware of what they can and cannot do on the property, and that was given.
Since she's offering testimony, I apologize for interrupting, but can we also have her sworn?
Sure. Please, just for a moment.
Do you swear or affirm that the testimony or factual representation that you're about to give to the board is truthful?
Yes.
Thank you.
And give us your last name, too.
Gutierrez.
Okay. Okay, so would you state that again now that you've been sworn?
We have a zoning verification letter that was provided for my client, and it was explains everything that whether they can or can't do it. That was provided on December 3rd.
Okay.
Of 2024.
And just so, and John, maybe you can answer this. It's not two separate buildings, though, is it?
No, it's one building.
Okay,
Two-bedroom, 1.5-bath with a
and that's
laundry
accurate
room and
from your
Yeah.
point of view, too, right? Okay.
When we
So-
saw it, that's what.
Well, no, so, I mean, I couldn't really tell from the photo. That's what I was looking to see if there was a...
And the survey shows one-story, single-family residence.
Again, it was part of the parcel
that's-
that
I think that's
Ms.
the next
Walker
one.
had that was, the whole group of properties were together, but that one was split off a long time ago.
Part of
Anderson's.
25006, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, well, so we just want to make sure that we're standing corrected on that it's a one unit. So in that regard, it's a single-family residence. There's no need to give any testimony. So, thank you. Okay, if you may have any questions or anything, or, of Brandon or anyone. I guess the thing we always talk about is whether there's a reason to give a 30-day delay or not. Anybody have any comments upon that?
I don't see a reason to do that. The amount of water that came through that area.
What's interesting, though, is they say it wasn't substantially damaged, which struck me as odd because, it is a low house right there on the Gulf, and so how they got away. It's great that didn't happen, but it makes me wonder what was on the inside. But that's fine. Okay. Anybody have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Oh, go ahead, Sean.
Certificate of appropriateness for demolition number 25006 of 205 Gulf Way, single-family contributing residence located at 205 Gulf Way, and waiving the 30 days.
No second.
Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Member Young?
Yes.
Vice Chair Hawkinsmith?
Yes.
Member Dashiell?
Yes.
Member Hurley?
Yes.
Chair Lowry?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay. Moving along, item 5, discussion items. 5A, design review for case number 24116 of the residence at 202 Roll Way.
Did we miss that one?
Get the PowerPoint pulled up, please. Do see the applicant and owners present. This is a design review case. This is being handled as a discussion item for board input. It's case number 24116 for 202 Paso Grill Way, Nate Meyer for Jay and Marcia Anderson. They are requesting construction of a new two-family residence built to the house large standards of the Paso Grill Overlay District. So here's the site plan. You can see the alleyway to the top of the screen and then Paso Grill Way to the bottom of the screen. This is the ground floor plan, so it doesn't show the interconnectedness of the first living level. This is a fairly scale-appropriate redevelopment of the lot relative to what was originally two separate lots and were later connecting the two homes on the property. I did want to point out that this is a house large development. The access remains from the alleyway as requested of applicants. It's not currently required. It will be required based on the proposed amendments to the overlay. I also wanted to point out the size of the structures. They are putting back structures with greater developed square footage. However, they do not have the limitation of the request that we just recently reviewed. Their lot area is large enough to support a two-family residence without that limitation due to the size of the property. So here you can see a rendering of the structure as proposed. The structure to the southern side retains a lot of the features of that colonial revival style that was previously on the lot. On the northern side, it has more of the craftsman features for that guest wing of the building. Here's a view from Paso Grill Way looking at the front of the structure. Staff finds the following is supportive of the design criteria. The structures do retain similar massing and scale to the structures that they replace. The parking remains accessible from the alleyway, which is definitely something that staff supports along with the board. The primary three-story structure retains the colonial revival features of the residence it replaces, including the use of multiple light windows, board and batten shutters, and overall form. And the lot is very well landscaped. Staff is requesting a little bit of additional landscaping in front of the guest wing of the residence, but otherwise it does seem to meet the criteria in the code. There were a few items that staff's review consultant found could help the structure better align with the design criteria. There was some lap siding applied to the craftsman residence that on the guest wing that could be better aligned with the primary residence. The modifications we recommend modifications that could make the crawl space level, the northern structure, that guest wing, better integrated with the living level of the guest wing, such as a parallel staircase to the south, use of wood railings, opening of the brick landing or similar. And I'll go back to the front view so you can see this. I believe the applicant, especially on the south side of the structure, the main portion of the residence, did a very good job at, despite the structure being elevated, it's at grade, it's visually integrated with the ground level. The northern side, especially because of that brick portion in front of the porch, it does draw your eyes down to that ground level, and that's something that our consultant could be maybe managed a little bit differently to put more emphasis on the porch entry rather than the lower crawl space level. And the stature of the guest wing could be minimized through recession from the frontage or other kind of modification, which again, just breaking up that frontage could improve. As always, the board could direct staff to review other elements of the design that would assist with ensuring the compatibility of new construction. That's really what we're focused on with these design reviews. The board may also request staff to return this item after modification have been made for a re-review, or include the final design as an informational item in a future agenda, as we do for those that do not develop to the overlay. That's all staff has. I'm happy to take questions. If not, the architect and owners are present.
I have some questions, but it's probably better, probably the architect would be better to answer those. I didn't know you're an architect, Jay, but that's good. No, that's fine. I'm just joking. State your name for the record, please.
My name is Jay Anderson, 202 Paso Grill Way.
Okay. Would you go back to it was the ground floor that you showed a minute ago? And I think I know the idea, but I'm just trying to get a feel for.
Can we pull the PowerPoint back up, please?
Yeah, that one there. So the middle part of the main house is just open air on that area, right? It's just like a breezeway or a walk-through.
We call it a breezeway.
Okay, that's what I thought. That's why we have kind of like two structures at that location.
Yeah.
And so these other two structures, I guess, would be on the east and west. Those are just foyer areas or storage areas or things of that nature.
Well, on the west side, it's garage, and on the east side is the entryway to the house.
Yes.
Where there'll be an elevator, and to the left of that is a storage / fitness room, all at grade.
Okay, and then the next slide, if you go to work, because I think first off, I think it looks great, but just the front entrance there.
The front entrance of the main house is almost identical to what the front entrance was of the old house.
Right, and but that enters into
that foyer.
Yes. Okay. And then, is the structure on the north, is the grade higher there a little bit?
No.
I mean, I guess I'm trying to, it looks like they're level. I mean, obviously the walkover, show me another one that shows.
Called a bridge.
Straight on. Can you show this? Yeah, the bridge of size or whatever right there between the two structures. Obviously, on the northern one, that's not built as high over grade as the southern one.
It's not.
Right, but yet the bridgeway is level. You follow what I'm saying? So
the bridgeway, actually, within the bridge, it walks up to the next level.
It does, okay.
We kept the house to the north, we kept at FEMA grade, which is 11 feet to the bottom of the rafters, because we wanted the house to remain low, and then the porch itself is even a couple steps down from that.
Right. I remember we'd had a discussion about that, but I couldn't figure that out because you've explained that, but there's a walk, it steps up from one to the other, and that makes sense. Okay. That's really all the questions I had.
And I know Brandon had some comments, or his people had some comments on the north house and the stairway that leads to the porch. We batted around their ideas or her ideas, his ideas, and still like the way the entrance we've presented. And we are, I have a picture, I don't know if it can be shown, but we've added a lot of foliage or landscaping that will, enhance the look of the front of the house. It's not on the picture that's on the screen now, but the picture I have here. And
No, you just put it up.
Oh, there it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. We will heavily landscape the whole house, period. And so that the front of the bungalow is not going to look, I guess, as bricky look as.
Gotcha.
But it will have lap siding. There'll be a brick on the stairway that'll be hidden by a lot of shrubbery. But we've, come up with this design and are fairly happy with where we are with it.
Let me ask you about the comment that the staff made about lap siding, which I guess is a different type of siding than the other house, right?
Well, the original bungalow had lap siding on it. We're duplicating that.
I guess my point being is it's kind of trying to emulate the fact of what you had before.
Yes.
That's almost, well, I know, I'm just pointing that out, I think maybe for staff to some reason too. There's no reason to be consistently the same on both homes because it's trying to look as if it was a home that was joined together at a later time, so, like it was. Does that make sense? I know it makes sense to me. But.
Well, when we came before you for a demolition permit, it was a trying time in our lives.
Right.
Has been since. But we also said that we want to bring back to you a house that duplicates as much history feel, Paso vernacular feel, a look of a house that would fit here. The only problem is it's got to go up in the air.
Yeah.
But we feel we've created that here.
Yeah, and I'm not saying you didn't. I'm just saying that the point of you doing the lap siding was intentionally to distinguish it from the other home, which is okay because it's more the original look.
Right.
Yes, okay. Now, the other part that I guess, only because we're trying to get this part here about whether it needs to come back in front of us or something like that, so that's why I'm trying to jump ahead of this. When staff also mentioned, is there an aerial shot there that you have of the where we can see the, that. Because the staff had recommended, I guess, that the northern house be moved back towards the alley. Is that accurate?
Well, I think that's one of the options. The other recommendation from our design consultant was potentially some of the other items that we went over, potentially even just at the landing of the staircase, just having that open and be an open railing just to take some emphasis off the crawl space level of that structure. As I understand it, that was her focus with making those comments. So I think that could be an option. Recessing the building could work as well. I am sure probably due to internal connectivity, there's a reason why they placed the placed it where they did, but there's a variety of options to make that work.
But setback-wise, the current design meets all the
It does
setback
meet.
requirements, okay.
Yes.
One of the, on the bungalow, and you were talking about the rear of the bungalow, the reason it sits on the footprint is that we feel, and we had used this in the past as parking spaces back there, just on shell. They weren't, it's not a garage, it's just parallel parking to the back of the house. That gives us 2 more parking spaces back there on a shell.
Yeah. No, it's good, and it's also not just a garage structure, it's more open. I mean, I appreciate that, that's all good. I'm just where I'm trying to get there, Ms. Anderson, is one of the requests at the end of staff was whether or not, you know, these are just suggestions, right? We can't require them to do things, and I guess the idea is, as long as we've talked it out, is there a reason to have it come back in front of us again to reevaluate it, you know, with changes? And well, that's what I'm trying to get where we're at. Okay. And so Brandon, when you were talking about, you know, maybe having railing in there instead of block to take away all that blank look or block work, that's probably something you don't want to do, I'm guessing, but you're going to try to remedy that by putting a lot more landscaping there to take away the look of that kind of blank wall.
If I can show you this shows the landscaping.
Yeah, right.
Takes away the blank look of the wall.
Okay.
We didn't have that on the original one that you have before you, but we've since redone that based on some of the comments that you had. That if you, I don't know if I can show
No,
that to
you put it on there before. You can do it again.
Put it on the overhead. You could pull the overhead, thanks.
Is
there you
part
are.
of the problem the brick just on the stair itself, or is it kind of the whole frontage?
On the landing of the stairs itself was what she recommended, if that could just be opened a bit to.
You follow what he's talking about, just right. So it opens it more up to look at the porch, I suppose. I don't know.
We tried to, you know, we wanted the stairs to come straight out as they were in the past, but it got into the easement and towards the sidewalk to where you couldn't create that many stairs and still have it come straight on.
Right.
So just out of curiosity, if you were to remove the bridge, would you be able to have size-wise, like the north houses that sit on a lot where it could be independent at one date in the future maybe, and the south house and pool could be independent at one date in the future?
Brandon has heard this question from us before. We actually, you know, what we do is we have a doorway at the north end of that bridge that can be closed off, that can separate the house. If we have family that doesn't want to, you know, come in and play with us, we'll close them off. But it's also going to be made of wood, not some cement, so that if we tore that out to try to create a single family house and move it, there would be some problems with replatting. That it wouldn't fit under the guidelines. Now we'd have to go through some sort of.
Right, you could never divide the lot and keep both houses because of the setbacks probably. I assume. I mean, that's kind of what you're
I think
asking.
it meets the setbacks.
But the distance between the two homes, would that meet those setback requirements? If the dividing line was right down the middle, would it meet the setbacks for each individual house?
It might be possible to replat, but I think it would have to be a full replat. It couldn't just be a lot split like the board sometimes sees. So.
Not that we're worried about that.
No,
you know,
just curious. It's very pretty, Jay.
Yeah,
Marcia.
very nice.
Pretty.
And I, being familiar with your past homes, I can't imagine how you could get it more closely resembling what it was. In fact, I think I like this better. No, no, it looks good.
Well, it was a, very conscious decision when we met here again. Like I said before, that I want to put back something that, Pasco will be proud of, and that it will retain a historic flavor and look as what we had. Not the sad part, because going up for us is probably going to make us feel a little bit better in future years, because we won't have to worry about what happened this time. But the look is important to maintain, and that's what we've tried to do here.
Okay. So does anybody on the board here feel that this should be brought back to us to be reevaluated at a later time? Okay. All right, well, this is all just for discussion purposes and information. I don't think anyone's making that request, or is that fair? There's no request that has to be redone and resubmitted or anything like that as far as we're concerned. Okay. All right, that's just, again, it's for information. Thank you very much, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so discussion items, some that we added that we've already talked about. I guess 5B would be, we were talking about, I mentioned the design guidebook. And you wanted to say something about that too, Brandon, or am I just...
I had a few items to address relative to the overlay, but we can talk about the design guidebook. Did you have a question, or?
Well, no, I just wanted to make, I know you're aware, and I'm sure Tara is as well, but I want to make people on the board aware, if they're not. You know, we have that April 2015 Pastoral Historic Site Survey that has good information, obviously, on what we're doing around here and examples of homes. And there's also this, I don't know where I got it, but it was something, this Pastoral pattern book. Has everybody got copies of that too? And all right, so I just want to make sure that everyone maybe gets familiar with that before we start talking about stuff, because I would imagine the lion's share of the work is kind of already done in these two books. It's just a matter of collating it and getting a little more specific. Is that fair to say?
That's fair to say.
Okay. So, with that being said about that, can you give us some idea of what you might think be a time frame on this thing? Or when we maybe should start talking about it again? I know you've been very busy with lots of other things that take priorities, but do you have any kind of feel for that?
Well, it won't be in March. It's probably about a 2-month process. I would think that we would probably bring the overlay amendments back to you next month, just to make sure that we're finalized on that. Before we take the amendments forward, we do want to have the guidebook, at least a draft of it. So we'll probably bring that back to the Historic Preservation Board in April, and then from there we would move on to Planning Board.
Okay.
So.
Thank you, that helps. And, okay, so then, I guess next we have Mary Pier and the Shuffleboard Court. Now, I just want to bring that to everyone's attention. You know, I was at that meeting yesterday that I thought was interesting, should be shared, that apparently because of the historic natures of those two locations, FEMA is prioritizing their damage reports on those two locations. So I know we had talked about maybe there might be grants or something that might go into getting those being redone. It just makes me feel that, not that if FEMA prioritizes, that doesn't necessarily mean the city is. Correct, you follow what I'm saying? We may get information earlier, but that may not be one of the first things we want to fix up, as opposed to, you know, seawalls and
Right.
that kind of thing.
Well, I think there's opportunity, especially with both of those structures being in our historic district and one being actually on our local historic registry prior to demolition. There are some funds available. We will be looking into grant opportunities with that the state of Florida administers this summer. So we'll definitely bring that back to you in the next month or two. It's a little more involved of a process than we've had for the surveys that we've been approved for the last few years, but it's funds available just the same. And they do in some cases cover reconstruction, so that's something that we'd be looking into.
But I think it's my understanding from yesterday too that both those structures are insured, or just maybe the Shuffleboard Court was, I don't know.
I believe so, yes.
Right, and then you mentioned, is the Mary Pier not locally designated?
It's not locally designated. It's part of the historic sites, but it's not, the building itself is not designated, no.
All right. And then the other thing I was thinking about that, and that we all should be maybe thinking about, is if we are, I mean, I'm sure eventually they'll be able to rebuild those structures, is would staff try to prepare examples of whatever that we could look at because we aren't strictly having to replace what was already there. We could, we can make new old stock, you know what I'm saying? We
Right.
could actually, for example, the Mary Pier, we could go back into older photographs even if there's some area that we wanted to make it look more like that than its current state. That's fair to say, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. We want to be limited to the same design. It would need to be scale appropriate, but you do have some flexibility with reconstruction. They're looking more at the function of the site instead of the building itself. So, and of course, that building's been modified so significantly over the time.
Yeah, I know originally it was 2 stories. Probably wouldn't get a 2-story one. But, okay, well, so I guess I'm just saying that from discussion purposes, that the board should kind of think about that, what we might want to do there, because I think we're going to have a lot of, input to that. All right. Anything else that we need to discuss, or anything else you wanted to add, Brandon?
Sure, I just wanted to cover the workshop feedback or lack thereof from last week. I think the one item that we are going to amend into the draft is that the default will be that all driveways need to be off an alleyway, regardless of the width of the alleyway, as long as there's an actual platted public alleyway behind the property. There would be an option for a design review waiver for any alley less than 15 feet in width, is what I understood. Is that the consensus of the board?
I believe so, yeah. I think that was a better way than just putting a number like
10 or 15.
Yeah, I think that's great. And then, so just so I don't confuse too, the design review, would that require a variance scenario or not, or are you not really in that category?
So I think the way it would be drafted, as I understood it, would be that if the alleyway were 15 feet in width or greater, it would need a variance, but under 15 feet, it would be expected that access be from the alleyway, but they would be able to request a waiver through the design review. So that would almost be like a historic preservation board level variance.
Okay, so under that scenario, in the design review, we could say yes or no, and that would
Yes.
be binding?
Correct.
Okay.
Right, yeah.
All right.
And actually, I had one other question, if we could pull the PowerPoint back up based on the design. So currently what's drafted in the code what is drafted in the amendments requires all accessory structures, including pools, be placed behind the residence. Obviously, the lot that you looked at today is unique. It's multiple platted lots, so the layout is not something you see on most other parcels in Pass or Grill, but this is obviously what would be considered in the secondary front yard, a pool. Just so we can move forward with amendments that are, the bow's tied next month, is this something that the board would be open to for unusual lots like this, where it might make more sense to put the home toward the front of the lot, along portion of the frontage, and then have an accessory structure off to the side?
Well, I think we need to kind of reconsider that no pools in the front yards thing if we're making that mandatory alley access for parking. To kind of consider other options for pool placement. I mean, in this case, it's not technically in the front yard. Their address is Pasquarel Way, and this is on the side road, but and behind the front setback too. So it's not really in the front yard, except it's a secondary front yard on the corner. I think we probably need to think about that pool placement.
Yeah,
versus
I
alley,
think-
what's the lesser of two evils, a pool in the front yard or an alley or a car park in the front yard?
Well, I was going to say, I wonder if it'd be simple enough to remove the definition of pool from accessories. Okay, because I think obviously we're normally talking about, I suppose, sheds and, things of that nature that are more structures than a pool that you can't see unless you walk up and fall in it anyway, So, I think that's why I asked you about that, whether the pool is an accessory, because I think, am I right in saying that accessories include all sorts of other smaller three-dimensional structures and stuff?
It does, sheds and gazebos and other
Right.
structures like that, but we can carve out an exception for pools if that's the consensus of the
And
board.
it's not a matter of, I guess, I don't know if it'd be in the design review, it's not a matter of, if we get the alley situation where I think we want it, it doesn't prevent somebody from having a pool in their backyard, but it limits it perhaps, okay?
On some of the tinier lots.
Yes, well, again, as I said, it used to be, that was the Gulf of Mexico was your pool. You know, you didn't need a little tiny waiting thing. But anyway, or the side of the house if they've got the room to do it, or maybe even the front if it's obviously not spanning the entire front, because I know a few have already been done. And, you know, we have that one when we approved that they haven't built it yet, where there's 2 lots and one lot's empty, and they're going to kind of build a pool with a pool house behind it.
Right.
Which, in my opinion, all that kind of stuff, if it's, you know, kind of tastefully done, that adds the uniqueness of and character of Paso Grill, really, you know. So, you know, I don't know if you all agree with what we were just talking about maybe removing the pool from the definition of accessory as far as under the Paso Grill overlay. Do you all want to talk about that, or anybody have feelings about that?
I don't have a problem with it being removed.
Yeah. Does that make sense to do it that way, or just?
It does. We still have the build to lines, and of course the properties that are going to be most affected by that are going to be those with alleyway access, because they're not on the beach or on the water, and they don't have that option to exceed that maximum front setback. But it would allow for at least a pool, like you said, to the side. They could potentially have a frontage and then have a pool, you know, within the jog of the building there, so that would give more options than the current draft.
I mean, you know, I just think as a matter of a little bit of philosophy is that, I mean, we always talk about, well, I do a lot, about scale being important on Paso Grill, right? Which it is, because, you know, it's a little small place with small cottages that were built, you know, many, many years ago, a lot of them. And so today's modern thought of having to have a pool in your yard, maybe that's just not the right, the scale, it throws the scale off of everything if that's becomes everyone's requirement. And even though it may not be what people want, that may be the price you have to pay if you want to live in a little area. I don't know, my opinion. Okay. Anything else?
No, I just want to make sure those are 2 items that the board wanted addressed based on the workshop.
And a reminder that the merry month of May is Historic Preservation Month, so is there any possibility that we would have plaques to distribute?
Yeah, I do think that we're going to have to start jumping on that pretty, you know, fairly quick, because from the input we've had from a lot of people that want to get historically designated, I think quite a few of them that said they'd like to have a plaque, and I think it benefits the whole area to do that anyway. So I don't know where we were on the, you know, the revitalization of the plaque program.
Well, I think we have a source for the plaques. I think it's just really about the funding, if I remember right.
Well, that was when Jen was here.
Let's we'll try to have an update for you next month.
And then, is it appropriate at any time for the board to host a social and invite those owners of historically designated homes to something like the library, which is historically designated, just for, you know, cake and lemonade or something? I just think it would be nice for us to do something for the community as a board.
Well, maybe something during Preservation Month would be a public outreach.
I defer to council on that, but I don't see where private citizens who volunteers can't do something private for other citizens, you know, unless I want somebody slipping in the icing and suing the city, you know, but.
Yeah, I can look into ways to
okay.
legally accomplish that goal.
I'm not going to go anyway, but I'm just kidding.
Yeah, you'll get after all 5 of us for being in the same place.
You know what, you're not invited.
Just by coincidence.
Anyway, right? No, so yeah, won't be able to talk about anything if we're all together.
I'll bring the lemonade.
We'll have to do in our.
Okay, well, yeah, if you could find that out, that would be great.
I mean, we do have to be cognizant of the Sunshine Law.
Yeah, well, exactly. So that's, yeah.
I'll look into ways maybe we could approach that, and I'll have that at the next meeting if you'd like.
Thank you.
That'd be nice.
Well, it would seem that as part of our duties as a board is public outreach, and that would satisfy a requirement of that. If we had something that is public outreach.
Yeah.
Inviting you know, those homes that have
I
plaques
guess it could
and,
be- I
and
guess
the
it could
public,
be
anybody
just
that's
select
interested.
people that we invited, it would
Yeah,
have
it
to
would
be
probably need
public.
notice to the
Or-
public.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
If we had those plaques available, the new ones, we could give them out and at that gathering.
Well, I think if we're talking about giving them out, I mean, if we're meeting about this next month, so that's March, I don't know if we would have them by May.
No.
But maybe that would be an opportunity to say to the people that came, this is what it will potentially look like that you can have on your home, and thank you for, getting your home historically designated, and maybe get, I don't know if we want to open up a can of worms for feedback, but there's always that. That would be fun. That would be fun.
Okay, anything else? I would notice, by the way, that the Beach Theater is getting some work done on it. I'd like to see when they get that finished. That'll be neat. Okay. Did you want to say anything about the library?
Or the historic?
No, the museum, no.
That's what I mean, the museum, excuse me.
Yeah,
right.
nothing new.
Okay.
Nothing there, still in a holding pattern.
All right, well, if that's all, adjourn.